Welcome on into today's trade recap. We finished the day up 83 bucks. This was definitely a day where we overtraded for sure. Way too many trades. There was a total of 6 trades actually. And we had 1 break even. We had 3 winners and 2 losers. So we net 83 bucks in the green, which really isn't that great. I guess you could classify this XBI $12 win more of like a break even. So maybe like 2 break evens. But that said, we started off with a crude oil short, and then we looked at XBI. We'll get into that. And then I want to pull up AMD's chart here on TradeZella. We'll do that in a second. And then I can even do XBI as well. Let's start with oil, just give you kind of a big picture view of what I was looking at and why I liked the crude oil short. So this actually was earlier in the crude oil finishes down nearly 5%. So pretty big move to the downside on crude. But if you go to the 5-minute chart, the level that I'm really kind of eyeing in was early in the day. If you go back a couple of days, crude oil underneath, let's go back on the 5-minute. You'll see that as it falls underneath 75 or so, that was kind of like the level that was the previous low. And so today we pretty much opened up, immediately dumped, and then we were below that level. So been in a downtrend the past couple of weeks here, which is why I liked it. And I entered short on the breakdown of this consolidation right here. So I ended up shorting crude right here. And then we got the move. Actually, I was honestly looking for, my stop loss was pretty tight here. So I had a stop loss over breaking candle high. So if the breaking candle, well, the breaking candle was this candle right here. So my stop loss was right here at around 74.25. So if I entered just around 74, it's a 25-cent stop, very tight stop. And so I was looking for about a 50-cent return, which would pull me down to around 73.50, which happened to be right around here. So that was all it really was, which it ended up coming back, retesting, and then eventually going off and going way lower. But we made a few bucks on that, and that was the crude oil trade there. The next trade was on XBI. I want to use the trade replay feature here in a second. So we'll do that actually in a sec. Which ones can we not? Meta and Tesla. I'll pull up these two. We'll go to AMD and XBI to finish things off. So Meta and Tesla were the other ones on the list. I'm going to recap all of these just so we have a good sense for like the thought process of all these today. Meta was actually one that was late in the day, and I took Meta as it was approaching, really as it was breaking out to high of day. So my entry on the Meta trade, executions, we entered 100 shares long at 33.02, and that was at 13.16. Let's see if I can pull that up. That actually is right around here. So I actually got in at a pretty bad price, looking back. It was on the break of this kind of consolidation, or this flag, if you will. So I entered right here. We were red briefly, and then it went up, pulled, and then it really ripped into close. And so we got a nice 2-to-1 risk-reward trade there, roughly on Meta. That was a nice one, and it was pretty straightforward, but it took its time. It was kind of a choppy move to the upside. Tesla, this is one that, if we pull this one back up, let's go back to our Tesla trade. Tesla, we lost 80 bucks. So if we jump back to Tesla, we got in here earlier today. It was a short at 231.39 was my entry price. Yeah, I was looking at it as, honestly, looking back, this is not the best of setups. The better short was the breakdown underneath here, but I did not trade that. I ended up trading this little, what I thought was a little consolidation flag here, ended up dipping and then ripping back up. So it wasn't the best of plays, to be honest there. And honestly, the reason why I was looking short, I shouldn't have really been looking short on anything today, but the reason why, outside of oil, which has been in a downtrend, reason why was we got this big gap below. So it was kind of a short down near low of day, looking to fill through some of this gap, or at least get into the top of the gap, as it was very, very weak. The market ends up rebounding a bit, and that didn't end up working out. So that was the deal there. We kept the loss nice and small, though. Well, we're tighter, 80. What do we lose on Tesla? 80 bucks. Meta was a 121 win. AMD was flat, and then XBI. So let's get to the XBI trades, and I'm going to go to trade replay here on TradeZella and talk about some of this. Oh yeah, one thing to also mention too was on Bookmap, I was looking at for Meta. You know, one thing that I wanted to pull up and mention before we get into the next one was I've been liking the CVD indicator, which is the cumulative volume delta. And so what you notice on the CVD I think is the keys to the CVD, I should say. If I bring this back to towards the open, what you're going to notice, let me zoom in a little bit so we get that. Yeah. What you're going to notice is like meta trends up for a good chunk of the day, but in this pullback to the downside, like early on in the day, 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., this is Central Time. So in the first hour of the day, we got this big pullback right here, even this one. But what do we notice on the CVD? The CVD is trending up. So we're seeing more aggressive buyers than sellers in the pullback. That's telling me maybe there's some divergence here and maybe we can see a further move up. And that's essentially a big piece to why I like the meta long later on in the day because of that, because we had some good CVD support. So if liquidity to me is helpful, but also at the same time, it's kind of I don't want to say it's self-explanatory, but I can kind of suspect key areas looking back on a chart at key resistance support or at key psychological levels, like at this 335. Yeah, it's a whole $5 level. Yeah, you're probably going to find a lot of buyers or a lot of sellers or a lot of orders stacking up at that price point. But I like using the CVD to kind of see those divergences, and it's pretty helpful, I think. So that was a big piece to why I was able to let the meta trade kind of work. So this trade here, I'm going to move it out to 9. It was a 953 entry point on this one on XBI. Now, this is the biotech ETF, okay? So if I were to play this out over time now, let's play this chart out. I see what I see is a big move down, and I see a bear flag. I see a bear flag consolidation here, okay? The thought process was, oh, let's short this. There's a pretty big gap to fill to the downside. So there's the entry. So we got a break to low day, I enter. But if I jump back really quick and I were to pull back up, let's go back to XBI on the daily time frame. You'll see what I mean. Like we were inside of this big gap. So I was looking at, okay, pretty big gap to fill back to the downside here. Massive upper wick yesterday. Not the best of looks for the long side. And XBI has had this history of making some big moves back down after the big moves up. So I was like, okay, maybe we're going to have a massive downside day on biotechs. And that was the deal. Ends up not panning out the way that I necessarily thought. We were up a little bit on the trade initially. And then you can kind of notice that shortly after on these 5-minute candles, we just stop drilling down and we start to bounce back. Now, here's the problem. Going into the day, here's my thought process. And this is actually something that I recently, a recent way that I've started to think about things, because it was kind of discouraging, I want to say, in weeks prior, when we would get, and this is, I think, going to be a big piece to, or a potential piece to the strategy in my trading going forward, is I like momentum, right? But I like to play upside breaks if we've been trending up and downside breaks if we've been trending down. Problem is, if we're trending up and then we get a pullback day, there's no upside breaks. Like there will be no trades on that given day, right? You might find some here and there, but generally speaking, there's not going to be very many trades and they're not going to be great. So my thought process kind of coming into the day was like, maybe the idea here, maybe, and this is kind of me just kind of thinking out loud, maybe the play is I will be looking for false breakdowns across stocks that have been in bigger picture uptrends and looking at false breakdowns. And this is an example of exactly that, which will then lead into the next trade. So you notice that it starts to like, I got out. So that was it. So we had this push down and now I'm like, wait a second. I was originally kind of thinking false breakdowns as a potential way to play a day like this. Maybe we got one right here. And so that's exactly what led me to then take the next trade on XBI, which if we jump back, this $12 win. So I'm going to pull it up here on the trade replay. And I'm going to go 30x speed. And this was now at 10 a.m. So, okay, so the thought process here, right, was we got this breakdown, as we'll then see here happen again, right? But if we start to regain the breakdown level, we could get in long. If we get a quick bounce back above the breakdown level, you can get in long in theory right here with a stop loss under those lows. And so that was kind of the plan. Now, the reality is that I didn't execute the plan properly, and this is a piece to my it kind of goes against my strategy, but it's also using my strategy to my advantage in these scenarios. So it's not like it's something that I don't think I want to do. I don't think I would do this a lot, but I think it's something that's worthwhile in terms of my approach. So I buy 250 shares at 69.73. I sold 50 after about a 20, 30, 25 cent pop. And then that was up near VWAP on the day. And then I moved my stop loss as we kind of go along here. This ends up being a longer trade than I probably wanted it to be. But I ended up moving my stop loss here. We're at 1021. I'm going to move things across a little bit longer, right? So I ended up getting out a little bit more on the push right here. So I scaled out 50 and 50. Now I'm down to 150 shares. I moved my stop loss to under these lows. And then I think I got stopped in this candle. Boom, stopped out. The reality was my stop loss originally was these lows. And so in theory, I could have kept in with a stop loss at those lows now, looking for roughly a 2-to-1 risk reward ratio. Does it have to be 2-to-1? No, but like roughly that was kind of the idea. In reality, I was looking for, we got to 70.22, like 5 to 10 more cents higher on XBI, and then that would have been my target, literally from my entry. So really got very, very close, but no cigar. Now, if you fast forward this out, what ends up happening is XBI pulls in just a bit more, but ends up holding the original breakdown point, and then ends up going to my target and a little bit more. Actually goes to 70.55 roughly before it kind of sputters around the rest of the day. Either way, that was this was a trade that ends up netting me only $12 because of the stop. But this was a trade that, like, this style of trade, definitely there's something to it. There's more to it, I should say. So I think it's something that I'm going to add to the arsenal going forward. And that's kind of me just being careful with it. Didn't want to make it become a big loss. So I just got a little bit, defensive and just, move my stop. That's really it. So this one was a long trade. This one was honestly, this is AMD. This one was kind of stupid on my end. I'm going to go to a 30-minute time frame. Really good setup on the 30-minute time frame. The problem that I think I have on an AMD or on this style of trade was, here's the chart. Really nice bull flag I see to the upside. Break over high a day gets me interested. But you get the move, and if you zoom down to a 5-minute time frame, I look at myself and I say to myself, how did you not make money on this trade? So I enter here on the break to high of day, and I end up staying in this trade. It was actually a 2-hour trade, all for break even. So not to bore you, I'll move this thing along and show you kind of what happens. It makes a nice push. It kind of sputters out after a little bit. And if I get you down here, it starts to kind of fall back off, and then we start seeing it eventually fall. I move my stop loss up to break even, which ends up being right under this little wick, and it eventually stops me out. But you say to yourself, it seemed like a pretty good trade, right? Well, you go to a 5-minute time frame, and I look at this, I look back and I go, how did I lose? In reality, I need to do a better job of, yes, using the 30-minute time frame for the setup, but then also potentially using the 5-minute time frame to lock some gains in along the way. And that was my mistake, because we had a really nice push. Did it get to my ultimate target? No, it got like 10, 15 cents shy. Literally, again, very close. Got close, but no cigar. But in the process, there should have been some sort of scale out along the way here. I got 100 shares. I should have locked in at least 25. You know what I mean? Along the way, maybe even more along the way, and then have the stop loss down to break even on the rest, which ends up stopping me out. But it is what it is, and that's kind of part of the game when it comes to over trading a little bit. But I kind of go back and forth using the higher time frames for the setup. But then at the same time, that 5-minute time frame is important, because the higher time frame, great, that's a great setup. And you're thinking, big move, and we totally could get a big move. But at the same time, you do want to lock in some of the gains, because like you were right, like there's no reason for this one to lose. Hence the movement of my stop loss to break even. But it kind of sucks that you had a span of time of from 10:45 all the way to 11:45 of 1 hour of price essentially moving in a direction that you were looking for, but you didn't lock any gains there. So that's a mistake on me, on my end, and how I'm handling this. But that right there is a summary of the day. Really quick, Surge Trader dashboard. How do we do in the day? So we can see that we had $83 in realized gains. We finished the day down 16 after we actually have an open swing, or we have a couple open swings. I'll cover those once we close them out. and we'll talk more about them. But that's where we kind of sit. So the current equity is down a little bit today, $16, but we realized some more gains, and so this has come up a bit, just kind of doing our thing. The market does provide nice moves at the end of the year. I think our swings will be just fine. So I'm happy, looking forward to that. But I think there'll be a slow scale up process. I'm not really rushing. Technically, we're still red on the month. If the swings work out, no, but we're technically red on the month. We're only halfway through. So it's a game of just kind of making sure we stack solid days up through the rest of the month without having big losses. And we don't have big losses. My biggest problem, like I've said before, is more of death by 1,000 cuts versus just saying, screw it, let's go in huge and then losing. No, I don't do that. I'm pretty good with managing the rest of these days. So that's today's trade recap. Thanks so much for watching. I know it was kind of long, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Links, resources to everything down below. Black Friday sales are coming up, so check those things out if you're interested in anything that we do use here on the channel all the time.